Somebody else next wants to go on that table? All right.
The weekend I'll be doing more projects, I guess. Until the snow falls, then I'll be leaving the house for the rest of it. And then snow blowing by myself.
And how are you going to communicate getting a coffee for yourself with other people? Are you going to communicate that?
We get in the car and leave.
Many people are just dragging her. There's no choice.
Who's paying for it? Somebody give it to you? Awesome.
It's not fair. Everyone else has the coffee. I just go leave like right now.
I'm doing it for myself right now. Oops, I'm gonna just put this here for a minute.
One thing I'm doing for myself is
All right.
doing homework.
Nice.
Awesome. And
That
you
is
can
awesome.
communicate that to them?
My parents are watching my kids and communicating with them to coordinate. So.
Nice.
Now we can move on to this table.
Alright, so I am going tomorrow to get a motor for my car.
Yeah.
And I'm talking to my husband and I
All right.
Sean, can I squeeze behind you quickly?
No, we changed our minds. No, okay.
No.
Driving down.
No.
I don't know where I'm going in the area. There's, it has to be a specific type of motor.
Oh, yeah.
And I can't find my way around, so now I do it in Vermont.
Well, then you get a trip to Vermont and it's beautiful.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
I went to Vermont last weekend.
My
It's
best
gorgeous.
friend's on her way there right now.
So you're going to get a trip in a moment.
Well, one thing I'm doing for myself, I don't know, I've been doing a lot of studying and homework, so I still have to work on that tonight, but I am doing family with, spend time with my family tomorrow, so I'm really looking forward to that. It's my nephew's 16th birthday today, so.
Happy birthday.
It's excited to see him. I guess communicating with my family when I'm down there, I'm really looking forward to that, because I've been kind of disconnected from them the past few weeks, where I've been busy, so I'm looking forward to getting together with them, so.
So one thing that I'm gonna do for myself is go to a meeting that I wanna check out on Sunday. And like with school and everything else, I have a big birthday party that I'm supposed to do tomorrow that I haven't done anything for. Like really, so like it's added stress, so it'll feel good to communicate with my babysitter, like here's my son, and like I won't have this like birthday party in the back of my mind to drive me crazy, so.
A happy birthday to your son too.
Yeah.
Happy birthday.
Me too.
It's a funny.
I'm going to paint. And I'm going to tell my children to get away and to stay in the other room.
Communicating in a nice way.
Don't send her on that one.
Yeah.
Are you painting like on an easel or painting a room?
No, I have like this huge watercolor book, I guess, and I paint on that.
Very cool.
Nice.
Yeah.
Me?
Yeah.
One thing I think I gotta sell. Sunday I'm taking a break from school work. And I'm gonna take my daughter apple picking.
All right. Where do you like to go?
Mainly apples and Dixmont. It's not too far from my house.
Yep.
Then we're gonna go home and then we're gonna make an apple pie and we're gonna make apple crisp.
Oh, yeah. Yum, yum.
Yes, because I have no test Monday, so yeah, well I do, but it's not.
Okay.
And any people that you have communicate that to? My husband and my daughter, and just let them know what we're doing, which I've already told them, and they're pretty excited. And yeah, past week. Where every night I've been like studying for that anatomy test, and I kind of feel like a little guilty in some ways about that, but I did good on it, so it paid off. But now I want to give them some time.
Yep.
I'm gonna be going up north to Island Falls just to visit with my daughter.
Ooh, Island Falls.
Bring my horse back.
Nice.
I'm communicating with my other siblings so that some days I can take care of my mom.
Excellent.
That's my neck of the woods.
Is it?
Yeah.
That's a long.
It is. It's up
Yeah.
there.
Where is it? I mean, geography's still.
It's at the end of I-95, like, well, right,
It's
15
about
minutes
an hour
before.
south of Holt.
Yeah.
Well, Island Falls.
Absolutely north of Orono area.
Yeah. Absolutely.
It's God's country.
All right. Cool.
Awesome.
Yeah, chance of frost freeze.
Yeah.
Pack your woolies.
I think I'm probably gonna do is hang out with animals. Cow.
Wow.
Yeah. Cool. What kind
That's
of
a lot of
cow?
hard work.
It's weird meat animals.
Okay.
And how do you do that? Ian, they will.
Okay, I'll go. I'm gonna spend a few hours with my best friend Trish, who I haven't seen since like probably December. And she's actually coming over and hopefully like for the afternoon on Tuesday. So I'm looking forward to it. And that's all about communication, because we have a lot to catch up on.
All right, so usually before this class started, I hit the gym. I've been hitting the gym at 5:30 till like 7 o'clock in the morning. I'm rushing to school because I have a CrossFit competition coming up in a month, and they want me to go to 7th. Last time I scored first place in the younger division. Now they want to go to the Masters division for people who've been 4 or 5 years, and I was doing CrossFit for like less than 2. So communication, just communicating with the coach, giving me the motivation to get out of bed, and having my sister do it with me because I want her to suffer with me.
Is this Letitia that you're pulling along with you?
Yeah, she's been doing it for me for the past couple days. She couldn't do it today, it didn't work. But I have a few friends do it with me, so it's fun. Yeah. Cool. That's all.
All right.
So that dedication early in the morning to get up and go?
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah, football, really.
Yeah.
Double sessions.
One thing I'm gonna do for myself is with the refund check to buy my first truck with it.
Nice.
So I'm doing that and communicating with that to people in my life about that is it's not really. I could tell them I got a new truck. I can also show them that it's even better. Yeah.
What kind of a truck?
It's a not bet you there's some people that don't like it. Ford Ranger.
Okay.
Some people don't like Ranger.
They're good first trucks out. They're good first trucks.
Yep.
I never Chevy.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I know, I'm partial to Chevy as well, but
I got your Ford back.
I said that.
No, a lot of people don't like Ford. So.
Yeah.
Something you have to grow up doing, I guess.
Yeah.
I still like you.
So he can't be late today. He has to go get his car.
No, I know. We'll get that. We'll get those checks for sure.
I'm actually also going apple picking with my parents this weekend.
Nice.
And
Cool.
I'll communicate that to my grandparents, so they're probably gonna have to fill up my dog out.
What kind of dog you have?
A bloodhound.
where will you go apple picking?
I have no idea.
We usually go to the apple farm.
That's pretty.
Yeah, that's kind of.
Yes.
Yep.
In which town?
Yeah, where
is that Fairfield or Skowhegan
It's
there?
between Fairfield and Skowhegan, I'm not sure which one's.
Yeah, that's where my son went.
Yeah, okay. Nice.
Yeah.
It's a nice
It's
place.
hard
It is a nice place.
And we have Lucas, is that his name?
No, Ethan.
Ethan.
So, what is one thing you're gonna do for yourself today, and how are you gonna communicate that to people on
I don't know. I don't usually plan more than a couple minutes ahead.
No wonder I get along with Ethan.
What are you gonna do after class today?
I don't know, probably tinker on my sled.
Oh, that's, is that something for yourself?
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah, gives you pleasure?
Good.
And do you need to communicate that with anybody that you're gonna be doing that? So the whole time?
No. I usually do that myself.
Is that yourself? Well, he has to communicate with himself.
Right.
You gotta do that sometimes.
And you sled, you're like, sled, are you ready? We're gonna get down here.
It's our motivation before you go in.
Right on.
Awesome. Well, I'm gonna turn it over to you, Nick.
Give it to me.
Yeah.
I'd be happy to. Cool. We're off Friday. It is Friday, and just that note that refund checks are available starting at 9. Our class goes until 11, and then we will just get out of the way and let everyone run and grab their check. Those are going to be available in the upper campus.
Yeah, like pretty much right beneath where we are right now.
The first time borrowers.
Yeah, well, and there's I got a heads up, I think there was an email that went out yesterday from Dean Normandin that they've had some computer issues. And there's always a delay of disbursement for first-time borrowers, but it appears that there's even some hiccups with those that have been borrowing, like continued borrowers as well. So I was meeting with a student this morning that was pretty taken aback because the check isn't the amount that they expected.
Okay.
So what Karen encouraged me to kind of send the message out is when you pick up your check, if it doesn't seem like it's calculating correctly, to go over to enrollment services and speak with someone in the office there. There'll be an additional disbursement, but it's not going to be for a couple more weeks. So you want to kind of figure out, oftentimes it's not uncommon for students to kind of spend that money before it even arrives. So we know that this is going to create a fair amount of stress for students. They're doing the best that they can. It sounds to me like it goes back to, say, June. They didn't do a proper upgrade of some computer system on the federal level. And where they discovered it this past week and tried to correct it, but it's not, obviously they're still dealing with trying to figure it out. So my communication, I hate being the bearer of bad news. I guess the good news is there should be checks available. The bad news is it may not be for the full amount that you expected, but the good news is there'll be another disbursement, but you want to make sure that you're communicating with the front office that there's an error so that they're keeping track of those issues.
The other thing too is if you were planning on like a larger amount than what you get, and you're really like counting on that to live, they do have an emergency loan process for I think it's up to $500 additional too, so you could do that with them as well.
Yep.
So.
One last piece is just remember to bring your photo ID and go down there to use your check. All right, so checks after class. They might not be as large sums as possible. We teased a little bit last time, and we started into the communication. We did the homework around analyzing communication at home. We talked a little bit about, because one huge piece of communication is listening. And we started to talk, we dipped our toe into that active listening part. What goes into effective listening? In order to communicate, you gotta listen, you gotta send, and you see. So we're gonna start today, right? We're gonna kick off today working through, well, maybe not. Hold on. I have a slide for you in just 1 second. But what I'll do is I'll have us, Landy gave you those cards, and we broke it into groups. So we're gonna hand out a reading, and the reading is broken up into 4 parts. So we're gonna give each group one of the parts of the reading. And in your group, as I'm pulling up the slide, in your group, we want you to practice some reading comprehension skills as a group. I think most of the passages are about maybe a page or 1.5 in length. Some of them are shorter, 4 pages shorter. But as a group, we want you to dive into this material, and you are going to present to the class the key points that you found within your skill. So as I'm pulling up the slide, we're pulling out those pieces. As a group, start to dive into the reading material. We're going to give you, we're going to give you about 15 minutes. 15 minutes to dive in, read it, and as a group, come up with the main points that you see. We're going to talk about 4 effective skills for reading our activity. So read it, digest it, create key talking points that you're going to present to the group. So in 15 minutes, we'll return back.
If I can just, for those of you who want a little more direction, if you need it, we're really looking for a summary or a description of whatever your skill is that you're going to be reading about, and explain to the group why that's important for effective communication. And then each one has some tips for how to do that or how to become better at. So then if you could talk about those tips as well. So you can figure out in your group how you're going to present it, how you're going to share the load. But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, I have those as well.
Right after the kids got up. So, and then I got to pick up my daughter, Dean. Oh, that's right. Yeah. So I picked her up. I'm excited. She called me over.
And in your presentation to the group, you can use the board, you can do it in whatever way you know. We could dance at Annie.
Play. So I heard back to the directors. Oh yeah. And then I was so now we're gonna go on to the transportation. So it was exciting going back. It kind of brought my passion back. Good. Yeah, kind of like slowly diving into it again. So yeah, going through reading kind of everything back. Okay. Yeah, I really like doing that. No, KVCC.
Yeah, that's how I like. This is my first completing my first term. So yeah, it was in the beginning of like wood. Yeah, so it's just following through with it. Yeah, that's kind of. I feel like this time around, like.
So we have farm share ready for you.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you for that.
Yeah, I think you put all that money because he was not
From the community, we have one representative. With me, I think it's two, because I went in because I was the chair for educator.
Yeah.
Policy council, but this year my term ends there, so I'm gonna be part of the committee.
So I might end up buying a car.
So there's two. Data. It's the fall.
Oh, yeah.
Housing.
Some days I'm.
I think those are the three main ones. Yeah, and then it's breaking up into finance, the facility. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I would imagine.
Yes, we're gonna volunteer. And then student body here, I'm just gonna get like some background to these things. So I'm doing vice president here. And then because she wouldn't be able to sit on the Thursday meetings, so I'm gonna be sitting in with the Thursday meetings. It's probably the same setup as the board of directors. Yeah. So I'm excited. It's gonna bring it down. It's bringing me back. What can I do for you? Yeah, we don't match. I didn't get her name yet, but she's the secretary. And she's the secretary. So that's exciting. And I like that. Because sometimes I can slack and she's so it's always just hard when you are someone like that. So I'm excited to work with her.
I'm open.
We need to well, yes, my Monday. I need to make up. Yes, I need to show you my wires. Yeah. And I did the agenda. Yeah, because I asked someone trying to see because I saw how she set up the whole meeting and everything. So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna make it. You know, it's like not really that thing when somebody gets to it. It's kind of similar. Yeah.
You know, you say your mom kind of turned, but then you're kind
Yeah, I'm excited too. You know, I finally did it. You know, it's like, when did you want to do it? So now I'm like, okay, I'm not going to big on it. I just want to like figure out what can we do with transportation. If we can make any movement this year, that would be great. So we just go to the movement that we like. Even if it's just like a bigger. So I think and then what I saw was from the other people that did committees last year, and I'm just, as a second year coming in, I'm just seeing it, just get it started, and just find somebody to kind of run it. Because
printing
kind
and
of
Whoever
put
holds
in
the
safe
stick has the floor.
place.
yeah, so I think at first I kind of had it like, but now it's like,
Get rolling. Like that Sunday, they go down on Saturday morning. She comes back Sunday, and I get this message. The furnace had gone, and all this soot and smoke went out, covered like all of it. So you ultimately you work with
everything on sign this week, Sunday, so I come back for Sunday, because I got it from the church. Yeah, so on Sunday we'll be back, and I'm excited and scared and nervous all at the same time. Yeah,
we knew that was gonna happen, and that we had left. So I feel like,
yeah,
my friend so I didn't see them live together, so I didn't have that model. So now when I see that model, it's and it means two different cultures. I'm sorry that like I feel like because I saw lots of women that were like women and taking right, two different cultures. Like my value is my kids are and I think that in his value just saw that value.
Oh, right.
And then it's I don't know what he wants. He's been simple for all these things, so he likes to simple. So he doesn't know what he wants in it.
Just don't rest.
But then so we never do that.
There's a best case scenario, worst case situation. It's like you say, most person.
Yeah, and then if it doesn't,
and she just returned.
Because I believe I found that too, that there's a lot of things I went in and fix myself too.
I mean, my gut is.
And stop wilderness. And then now I was at the phase 2, it's like, you know when you go so low, find that he's there. Yeah, he's there. So there's, that's why I'm like, okay, there is a little bit of,
And I have it.
because I think he needs to start explaining goals for himself and more stuff for himself. I think he's like, really wants to. And then what I added to business, not to lose yourself. I know because you lose yourself and then it takes and it's communicating with problems that's going on. And I really you're doing what's going on. Let's know right
What's going on?
Go downstairs and you just look and laugh. It wouldn't check it out. Usually there's no one in there, you know? And yeah, you go down and just see if anybody's in there and all.
Well, to be honest with you, I don't communicate because I look
Yeah.
Other than companies
Saturday.
And I have to work on such a long time. So scared.
It's also on Saturdays, yeah. There's a learning commons. So
if they're family members, so just don't freak kids. And then they'll all run out.
The news is just so biased. I mean, I'm biased, but I don't need something that's out my I certainly don't want to hit I kind of want speed.
We haven't done it. We really haven't grown a salary.
She's got a husband, so I know she has to come home. It's on that. That's right.
That's not a writing.
You need to try it.
Well, we've read it, we've discussed it. I think we're okay. I think, do you?
And you can engage the group too, if you want to.
I think some of the things are a little funny,
You can say that too.
you know, if I approach Darren.
Yeah, we've got about the 1 minute warning.
Paper, you're right here.
There may be
Because the left part of your brain processes. But it says put your chin up in your ear. Put your chin down. Put your chin down and your ear towards that one. Yeah. Well, I kind of brought up, I don't know if you watched Big Bang Theory. It was on the show I like. The show Penny. So Sheldon One of the flags. So he sits like this, and then he wants to take it up to her legs. That's what he has.
Yeah, they're looking so they're
But I said I don't see enough.
All right. If I had, I do have the cowbell, but I'm going to cowbell. This is the ghost cowbell.
Standing right in front of the camera.
So, as a group, we have the spades, the hearts, the diamonds, and the spades and the clubs. Cool. These are the pieces. So 4 key skills to improve communication. Each group is going to fill us in on what these 4 keys are. Big picture view. First one, become an engaged listener. 2, pay attention to nonverbal signal. 2 is going to tell us all about the nonverbals. 3, keep stress in check. My God. Feeling it this Friday. And then 4, assert yourself. So we're going to let each group let us know each piece of our 4 total pieces of effective communication. Do we have group 1? Who's going to get us started in terms of how to become an engaged listener? And I know Camille said there was major communication going on in this group. All right, the floor is yours. You can use the board. You can use the center aisle if you need props. Let us know.
We're not 1 number 2.
Oh, you're
we're number 1.
Engaged listener. All right, let's go number 1. Camille is ready.
Hold on, are we supposed to be acting this out?
No. So you have time. Group 1's going to go. So if you want to add something.
Well, we're not going to do one, so.
All right. Group 1, do you want to come up here or do it from there?
You got the floor. Take it.
I'm doing it here, not there.
All right.
We'll get you up there eventually.
Yes,
Don't
we
worry.
will. Yes, thank you, man. All right, so I'm going to turn the camera on you. So these are the engaged listeners.
Okay, so we have engaged listeners, which is basically understanding the emotions to what people are saying instead of just listening. You're looking for changes in their voice that tells you what they're feeling. It helps you better understand the other person, makes them feel heard and like you're understanding what they're saying and you're having a deeper connection with them. So basically, if the person you're talking to is calm, listening in an engaged way will help you to calm down yourself. But if they're agitated, you're going to become agitated just talking to them.
Yeah, and there was even some science behind it because they say try to listen with your right ear. Mm-hmm. Now, I think the book, I think the article made it so you could exaggerate a little bit. It said chin down, right ear towards a person.
The personal bubble now. Yeah, the lean in. Go on, Tony. We're listening.
So you could nonchalantly listen through your right ear because it's the left side of your brain, and we know if we've taken A and P, your left side controls your right controls your left, so that would make sense. So that part of your brain that's listening is on the left side. So you try to be attentive more with the right ear.
Interesting.
Yeah, the A&P master. Yeah.
You have something to add? Just something about listening. Don't even necessarily have to be on that. Just have something that you do to listen.
Oh, what I do to listen.
There you go.
I usually try to run away, but people follow. What I usually do to listen, some people, I guess, for me, they really, like, they want to talk, but they don't. So usually you have to be the one that shoots the bullet. So you go and you start, like, a little, like, if you know that they're having a troubled day and you see that they're, like, panting, like, walking back and forth and having an issue, and you'd be like, usually you go and shoot the bullet and say, how's your day, how you doing, you got any problems, would you like to share, and then usually that just takes them right off and they just go and they start talking to you. Usually it helps them quite a bit for the rest of the day, because it's like they dropped the load off their chest and they threw it on you. And then they go back to doing your business, but then you take the load off and you feel off. You're like, don't worry about it. It's not my business. Just lock it somewhere and leave it alone. It's usually like that for a lot of people, I've noticed. Through my growing up, it's been from like middle school to high school. Growing up, I've like watched people and like their emotions of like one day when they're pissed off, you can see that real good. Learning to pick that one up real well. Days that they're shy and embarrassed, so usually you want to cope them in. And then days that they're just outgoing. Usually I keep away from the outgoing people. Because they just keep going.
You must love this class.
No, I go home and it starts with the baby sister and it goes from her to like Nathaniel to Mason then to my mom. And I sit there like, I want to talk. So it's like I've been growing up just hearing most of my life. So
that's why I suggested on the carry that Stephen Covey's dead.
Yeah.
His family. It's my turn.
It also talks about focusing all your attention onto the person that is telling you something. And then don't interrupt. Let them talk. Let them tell you what's going on. Be interested in what they're saying. Don't judge what they're saying. Let them just talk. Providing feedback. And then that says that you can exercise your middle ear muscles.
That sounds good.
By singing, playing a wind instrument, and listening to certain types of music. Specifically high frequency Mozart violin.
Right.
Which basically helps you detect higher frequencies that people that are showing emotion have higher frequencies.
See, yeah, I thought that was absolutely incredible. So listening to those higher frequency, like Mozart or classical music, literally kind of strengthens that inner ear muscle. So you're able to tune into emotion. It's wild.
Rather than listening to low frequency rock.
Right.
Nothing against that.
I know.
I
I get emotional when I listen to Metallica sometimes.
Mozart or singing.
Yeah. So you can sing to yourself and then be better to train it.
Boy, if I sing.
It didn't say you had to sing good, it just said you had to sing.
That's a signal that everybody will leave the room.
Excellent.
Probably a lot better than cowboy, right?
There was a piece in there too about judgment. So if somebody's telling me something maybe that I really don't agree with, being able to still be attentive, still stay there amidst what they're saying.
It builds a stronger connection.
It does. It does. And I feel it will set up for a more constructive communication session. You know, if you're there, but if you're coming back and be like, listen, Tony, I hate the New York Jets, all right? I'm going to interrupt you right here. I can't listen to you anymore about you loving the New York Jets. That's going to shut off the conversation. Another piece and you all are going to get copies of each of these tools, the big picture. But I know for me, and I practice these and review these quite often, is providing feedback to increase the ability to. Mitchell was saying people kind of unload on him, dump this thing on here. He has a reaction. But remember, in that effective communication model, the sender and the receiver takes in what's said and reflects back. And they give you some really awesome cues to do this. And after you leave here today, try these when you're talking to people. Practice it and see what happens to their reaction. See what happens to the conversation and the communication. Like I love, what I'm hearing is, Tony, that you've loved the New York Jets since you were age 5. And see where that's it. I'm kind of pushing down my judgment. But that's your ability to reflect back. And then the person could say, no, that's not at all what I was saying. But it gives you an opportunity to deepen that communication. But I love that they give you some sound bites, some talking points to use. And we want to give you these tools so that you can insert those. Your family will be like, wow, you're reflecting back. Yes.
And I think it's important to point out that no one is a perfect listener all the time. I think all of us, we have to be constantly gauging how we're interacting, especially in our jobs, to make sure that we are really 100% focused on the student who's talking to us. Because it's very easy for us to, in our minds, be going, okay, I can tell the student this, and I can help them. And not really hearing, so I need to, I'm constantly checking myself, pulling myself back, just pay attention, just listen. But it comes with practice. So even if you don't feel like you got this down, like you're a very good listener at this point, and a lot of these things that the article says you should do, you don't do, you can become a better listener, a more engaged listener. But it takes practice. And it's uncomfortable at first, but it's also really fascinating what you learn, what you hear when you really are engaged in the listening.
Yes.
Sometimes you can be an over listener. Like when I'm in class, usually I'll sit there, listen to the teacher, but then he'll be going off and doing something totally different off topic, and I'll be listening to what people are talking in class. I'm like, ooh, I did not need to hear that.
Interesting. That's a conversation after class. But there are so many things pulling for our attention all the time. Like there's that, there's this outside, there's thinking about what we're going to do for ourselves. Randy says it requires energy to stay right there. That's powerful. I think, and we're going to segue to nonverbal signals, but as a listener and an engaged listener, being aware to your body language. I know Tony said our ears literally engaged, but as you're doing that, I had a very good friend who was actually a pretty great listener, but as I was talking to them, they'd be like this. Or like checking their nails, and that totally, for me, that shut off anything as far as talking to them about anything. I mean, literally, their nails incredibly clean, but they would choose to, just because they're kind of an anxious piece. So be aware of as you're listening, the things you're doing with your body.
Yeah,
You know,
it says checking text messages, doodling.
I think especially with phones now,
right.
like, you don't like have somebody come over and really like talk anymore. You're like word or two in between texting or checking Facebook or, you know, like it's that phone in your face all the time. I feel like it's really hard to have conversations sometimes.
You know there's actually a term for that now?
Oh, really?
What's that?
It's called phubbing.
Phubbing.
That means you're engaging with somebody and they're on their cell phone basically phubbing.
I remember that, yes, we learned about it in
Wow.
communications class.
Wow.
Yeah.
So just awareness. Yeah. Cool. Any other comments for group 1? Synapses. And once again, we're going to hand out the article that has all of these pieces to it. All right, Carmen, are you ready to dance?
I am ready.
All right.
Alright, so pay attention to nonverbal signals. That was our thing. So we basically, more than half of our communication is nonverbal, our nonverbal signals, or body language. It includes facial expressions, body movements, gestures, eye contact, posture, tone of your voice, and even your muscle tension and breathing. There are certain movements and things that you can do to help, it says, enhance effective communication. And it says you can use open body language, which is arms uncrossed, standing with an open stance, sitting at the edge of your seat, maintaining eye contact. And then they have emphasize or enhance your verbal message. You can use body language to do that by patting your friend on the back or pounding your fist. I'm assuming when you're upset. Yes, do it.
Slap, slap, please.
Wow. Then it says there's tips for improving how you read verbal communication. The first point is be aware of an individual's difference. So we all know we all come from different cultures, different places, so that affects the things that we do. An example from my teacher, actually, Kurt, he said that over here, this is cool, this is okay, but in Germany, this actually has a very different meaning, and it's, you know, one of your body parts that's not so nice. So all those different things affect how you process how the person's communicating with you. And then, like how you guys were saying, we were actually having a conversation about the phone and the eye roll, the arms crossed, and it was something else that you guys were saying.
Just doing things that we don't realize that we're doing, and how we come across to people. Not necessarily meaning to, but
the rest of that bitch face.
Yeah. And how they're becoming aware of all those things and how it affects our communication with people, and, you know, thinking about how, the other person as well, because it's not just us, and we tend to just like think of us and what's going on in our heads and stuff, and we kind of have to take a step back from that sometimes and think of the other person. You know, the other person could be having a really bad day, and you know, that's why their tone of voice is like that. They're upset, but they're not upset with you. It's just how you're hearing them right now, because you don't know what happened before they got to you. Look at nonverbal communication signals as a group. So when you're having a conversation, like we just said, we all do the hand crossing and stuff. We have to look at it through the entire conversation. Is the person through the entire conversation looking at you like this? You know, or are they engaged, but then sometimes they put their, you know, their arms like that. Tips for how you deliver nonverbal communication. It says, make sure you reinforce what you're saying and not contradicting, so don't give confusing signals like saying yes and shaking your head. It'll it'll make the person feel like you're being dishonest, which we know that messes up communication when someone doesn't feel like what you're saying is true. Then we have, okay, adjust your nonverbal signals according to the context. As it was the same thing, taking into account the emotional state and the cultural background of yourself and the other person when you're communicating, and making sure that those factors play in when you respond and engage. And then use body language to convey positive feelings. So basically, even if you're not the most confident person, it'll make you feel better, essentially. They say if you fake it till you make it. So, you're nervous. Yeah, you're nervous about going in the room. Don't, shy and go into the corner. You pick your head up. You try and ground yourself or relax yourself as much as you can. And, walk in like there's nothing wrong.
It is
huge. It is
That's
huge.
an excellent piece of advice, just in general.
Yes.
Yep.
Is everyone familiar with the Wonder Woman pose? I think
Yes.
you chuckled when I
Yes.
changed my stance, but that's one of those fake it till you make it. You own the room, with that kind of a stance. That you're putting yourself out there, and you might be pretty uncomfortable needing to do maybe standing up and speaking on behalf of your group. So part of faking it till you make it is, being aware of your posture, making that eye contact, and you own the room. And you know what? It works.
It works.
It really does.
How many of you, I know many of you have, because so many students have said stuff to me like, God, there's some students, they just show up to class and they just seem to know it all and they get everything, and I feel so stupid. A lot of those students are doing just what we're saying. They're faking it. They're faking it really well. A lot of students have honed that skill. A lot of people, just in the world in general, hone that skill of acting really confident because they know it's going to help them in a situation if they're perceived as confident. So, you can fake it too. You can fake it too. Until you feel it.
And even like an A&P situation, if you think about your body when you're like this, how you're breathing and all of that, things are so closed and tight. But even if you go Wonder Woman, you open that up. Now your breathing and it's fueling your brain with oxygen, all those things. Everything is opening up. So yeah, I would love everybody in one of the classes to drop the Wonder Woman pose and then boom, we could do like a Facebook contest. Get in there, just try it, see what it feels like.
Piece of
Boom.
Test taking strategies is
Yes.
you can be your own worst enemy. So getting in that positive mindset, walking in and kind of owning it as you walk in, will help with that performance.
Oh, I can testify to that. My last semester, I had to fake it until I made it. I had to fake it. I had to even my classes. I was midterm came and I was my classes were but I had to stand up and fake it. I would walk around you would think there's nothing wrong with me with a smile on my face, there was nothing wrong, but I had to fake it until I made it. Yeah, I had to do it.
And I think sometimes it's a physical thing. When I walk into a room, I kind of get a tick in my neck. And I know it sounds really weird, but my muscles tense up. And I just started learning that about myself now. I've been studying myself, becoming aware. So now when I do that, I have a second step. So I have to remind myself to really relax my muscles, completely. And you really don't notice. It comes second nature. Right now, all of us are tense. Right now. And you really have to be aware and take a second and just, and you feel the difference. You become aware
that
of
mindfulness.
Yeah.
And that's exactly, it's actually called grounding. These are things I was researching, mindfulness, and it might sound silly, but if you actually sit there and focus and just let your muscles go, it's a real physical thing. And it kind of lessens that tension sometimes.
And the more you do that, the more you're
Mhm.
changing the body-mind connection.
Absolutely.
It can be a very powerful tool.
Yes. And that's why we want to present this to you in this class, is to want to give you those tools, but also kind of raise your consciousness to what is my body doing as I'm listening, as I'm going into class? And how does that affect? Or what are the things I'm doing with my hands? Sometimes we don't even know it until somebody either brings our attention to it or we look at it through these lenses.
Right, because these are interpersonal skills that oftentimes the workforce refers to as soft skills.
Mm-hmm.
So being cognizant of that, you can be the brightest rad student,
yeah.
and you can bomb your interview.
Absolutely.
If you're not self-aware of how you're carrying yourself and presenting yourself. So, even in your own life, within your family, you can be sending signals that really aren't communicating where you want to be or what you want to be doing. So it really hits so many pieces of our lives. These are essential skills in college and in life.
Yes. And I know employers, I mean, if you have that skill of active listening and even bringing that up in interviews and demonstrating that, and even if you're not 100% like a master rad student, you can learn through listening and and reflecting and then learning and growing. So it can apply to your workspace too. So your employers, when you go on interviews, be like, I'm well skilled in active listening for my FYE 125 class. We learned this.
Be like this.
Yeah, be like.
I want the belt.
You got it. Well, yeah. So it's his first and then, and then what is the
That's a dance.
Yeah. And then you go. Anyways, all right, I want to be mindful of time. Thank you, group 2, very much. Let's get stressed out in group 3. Where are we? Melissa, are you ready?
Yeah.
To the
We
top.
had a cheap stress in check. And basically this is to communicate effectively, you need to be in control of your emotions. Because when you're stressed, you're likely to misread other people. Or if you're having a stressful conversation with a coworker, your child, your husband, family member, sometimes you can say something when you think about it. You say things that you regret because you're just so stressed out at the time. Then afterwards, say that. And a lot of times, if you can figure out a way to quickly relieve your stress, you can calm the other person down as well if they see that you're calm. And one of the things that you can do to remain calm under pressure is to use a stalling tactic. Basically, like repeat a question or ask for clarification because it gives you time to think before you just blurt something out that you wish you hadn't said. And another thing that you can do is to pause, to collect your thoughts, like just don't say anything because silence isn't necessarily a bad thing. Pausing can make you seem kind of more in control.
Another thing you can do is just make one point, because if you make multiple points all together, people will start to lose interest. But you can also, if you do make one point, just look to see if they're actually wanting to go. You can also deliver your words clearly. This is, make sure they understand what you're saying. And then wrap up with a summary. Summary is just not and even then stop talking with loose sentence
Another thing you can do is you can recognize when you're being stressed. A lot of times your body will let you know if you're being stressed, like forget to breathe, or your muscles or your stomach are tight and stuff like that. And you need to take a moment to calm down sometime before deciding to continue in a conversation or postpone it. And then bring your senses to the rescue and quickly manage stress by taking a few deep breaths, punching and relaxing muscles, or recalling a soothing, sensory-rich image, for example. The best way to rapidly and reliably relieve stress is through the senses: sight, sound, touch, taste, and smell. But each person responds differently to a sensory input, so you need to find the things that are soothing to you.
Find your happy place.
Yes.
Like Happy Gilmore said.
Love that movie.
Absolutely. Yeah. And as we're saying, it's different for different people. Like, not everybody is going to be Hawaii with waterfalls falling. I mean, sometimes it can be, you know, your bedroom at home. You know, those really safe spaces.
Finding your happy place is an important piece of this. Like when you're in the grocery line that's a mile long.
Yeah. Right.
And you can't abandon your cart.
Yeah.
You know, finding your happy place while you're trying to wait patiently to get through the line to get where you need to be. It's an important skill. It really is. Yeah.
Another thing to relieve stress is look for the humor in the situation. I know working on a farm all my life, if you've got 10 wagon loads of hay lined up and you've got black clouds coming, it gets pretty stressful. So we end up making a game out of it, see how fast we can get them unloaded.
Cool.
Make jokes. And then be willing to compromise and make things easier. Is also invest in the future. And agree to disagree. I don't always agree with the way my son does things. He certainly doesn't always agree with the way I do things. But we try to come to a compromise and make the day end on a good note. And then physical movement is also a good way. If you're stressed out, just get away. That's what I do. I just go for a walk. Off my four-wheeler, just down to the woods and go. This way.
Being in nature is a big piece of this. And in the state that we live in, the part of the country that we live in, we tend to hibernate in the wintertime. You know, I know I'm absolutely guilty of the pajama. I can get my flannel jammies on, you know, earlier and earlier as you know the solstice changes, and everything. There's a lot of research behind this. That some talk about happy lights, but really getting outside, even in the middle of the cold weather months, really helps your brain with being able to deal with stress. So those sometimes just taking a walk outdoors can really help shift things, your mood.
Absolutely.
So I love that piece there of taking a walk.
Yes. And with that, I mean, we do the Malones, but he was an absolute master he'd be talking to a student, and the communication would be kind of tough and tense and tight and stressful, and be like, let's go for a walk. I'm getting the Malones just thinking about it. And like you would see him walking with a student, you know, in and around, I think about the Alphon campus, you know, past the gazebo, and that can open up the, spaces where it was really tight or the communication was really stressed. Just walking and breathing and being together and being outside, that I've watched it just open up conversation and open up communication in really meaningful and powerful ways.
And it's a real good tool for study, you know, to be able to take a break and get outside, you know, maybe hang in the clothes, you know, like, so you're doing double duty, but you're getting some of that sunlight, fresh air, can really help kind of reset you, mood-wise.
And once again, we're providing this lens to look at the world around you, to look at the way you communicate. We're bombarded with all kinds of examples of communicating under stress, whether it's politically or the things that are going on around our world. So watch how those kinds of things happen. You know, become kind of students of communication, you know, looking at it through these lenses. One other piece too, I think there's real power, and I have to tell myself this all the time. Just, I know personally my brain goes 1,000 miles a minute, but to be able to say, if I'm talking to Melissa and she asks me something, it is perfectly okay to say, Melissa, I want to make sure I have you know, a well thought out response to your answer. I'm going to take a minute to formulate that. That is perfectly okay. I know sometimes we're in this fast-paced world. Your instructor says, you know, Mitchell, give me the answer to this question, and he's like, you know, it is perfectly okay to say, you know what, I'm gonna take a minute and think, so I have, you know, a meaningful answer to you. I don't think we always know we have that option in communication and listening. So you try it, you know, between now and next Friday. Try, if you're in that space, to say, I'm gonna take a minute before I respond to that. That's huge. It's huge. Any other thoughts for the stress group? Thank you. And last but not least, assert.
So with asserting yourself, one of the biggest key points was learning to say no.
Ooh.
And it's okay to say no, and you shouldn't feel bad about it. And because you need to take time for yourself and not be pressured into doing a ton of stuff for other people all the time.
Mm-hmm. That was so hard.
And pardon me. Well, one of them effective communications was it's what I learned experience. I still have to learn it sometimes. It's not by telling somebody that's the best player, but asking them for what their opinion is too, even though you know you're 110% the right way or efficient way. Having that person say, "Hey, I like this idea. What do you think?" So they feel like they're a part of it too, and that you're not coming off as rude. Yep.
Asserting your opinion was another one, but don't forget everyone has a different opinion. And be respectful about it, because everyone has their own thoughts and stuff that they have. It's their like own personal property. You can't like disrespect it, kind of. So you have to take into consideration their feelings and how they feel in that situation also. So you can't be like aggressive about it. Like the example I use is PCs versus Mac. You know, like, oh, I love Apple. You should get an Apple.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, no, I respect like Apple, but I prefer PCs better. That's just my opinion. That's cool. My example of it. But
I love it.
Fords. Just like you
Fords, I know.
I like when you mouth it too.
Yeah.
And mine is express negative thoughts in a nice way without hurting anyone else's feelings. And you need to take the time to think before you respond. And don't respond in hate. Feel that if you don't take that minute, like you said, to reflect upon what was said, that you're going to say something wrong.
Beautiful. There were 3 pieces, the techniques on the bottom of that page. I know when we taught this last time, we practiced some of those, and we checked in on some of those. But can you tell us what you discovered about those bottom 3? We're gonna give you an example to look at some of these in a minute.
We kind of just incorporated them into what we said.
Okay. So the empathetic assertion is what Kyle was saying. You know, I hear you like PC, but I love Apple. You're acknowledging. What would be an example of escalating assertion? Woo. And not on the thing in the mall.
Well, if you come across as like a know-it-all and rude and like there's no open dialogue for discussion if you know it all. And if that happens, then you're not going to get any communication. No one's going to want to communicate with you because you already know, you've already set your mind.
That's going to close it down.
If you were to listen to me and my mother talk sometimes, one will get a point, one will be a little bit louder. The next one will be louder. The next one will be louder. Pretty soon, the whole community knows our business. Because it keeps escalating.
So are there ever times, do you feel, are there ever times when we're communicating where you need to take your communication to the next level? You need to assert yourself to say, the example, the point they give here is, if you don't abide by the contract, I'm going to be forced to pursue legal action. You know, think about times in your life where you do have to escalate that communication to the next level. We work with students, you know, they come in and maybe, you know, they've gone 2 semesters, they haven't showed up to our meetings and those kinds. Sometimes we need to escalate that, you know, assertiveness to say, hey, I've noticed the following 3 trends, and if you want to be part of a program, we need you to be an active participant. And we're not doing that to wag the finger. We're doing that to hopefully motivate them to engage, to be part of the process. But think about that sometimes in an uncomfortable space when you have to escalate that communication.
Kind of like a negotiation.
Yeah, right. And there's ways of doing it, and there's ways of doing it that, you know, hopefully promote more conversation. But there's a risk there. If you escalate that, now this person has the legal backing behind them. So if the person doesn't listen to them, legal action is going to happen. But there will be times where you have to escalate, you know, and assert yourself in those ways. So we want to at least introduce that into this conversation too. It's not all going to be birds tweeting in your happy place, communicating and back and forth, and it's always going to be, it gets messy sometimes. It gets uncomfortable sometimes. So knowing these, you know, these techniques and knowing these ways of doing that is crucial, and to keep practicing. So we have provided you some lenses to look at communication. And we're closing in on our time. So we want to give you some scenarios. We want you to participate in 3 scenarios, 3 communication scenarios. And we want you to kind of be mindful. We want you to be mindful. I'm going to be more assertive in my statement. We want you to be mindful of what we've talked about here. We want you to analyze these ways of communicating. So we have 4 tables, and I'm going with this. We have 3 scenarios. And I'm wondering if one of our scenarios we could have 2 students presenting the talk. They both came back with the same frustration. I think we can. If we give them 15 minutes to do the email, we'll cut that back really quick. And then some. Yeah. I'm willing to. Plus, I want to see Michelle. I mean, this is you are in for a real treat. So if each table could come up with a willing volunteer to participate in our example here, what we will do is the willing volunteer will be volunteering for this. Annie's looking at me, so she's already volunteered. So she did. Yeah, you weren't doing it, so your table's done. Your table's all set. So as a table, pick about one person who you would be willing to send forward. And this is what you do. Imagine you are a student. Okay, easy to do. And this is your situation. You just came out of your A&P class, or your math class, or your English 101 class, and you just got back your first test, or your first paper. Okay? And your results were not, you studied like crazy. You came and you worked with Mandy, you met with Lisa for your English paper, you talked to Michelle, she gave you these really cool study techniques, but your results were not so great. And you're kind of fired up, you're kind of feeling a little bit emotional about it, and borderline angry, borderline frustrated, and you're wanting to know what you can do to improve your score. So you've built up your courage, you're ready to go and talk to your instructor, because you've come to the trio folks and they said, go see your instructor. Chat, why don't you talk to your instructor, see what you can do to improve your score. Okay, so that's the scenario. So think at your table, or you can do paper, rock, scissors. We have 3 instructors who will gladly volunteer their time. And so you're going to send your representative up to the instructor, and you're going to present your case. You're going to ask them that question: How could you do better on the exam? You noticed that you didn't get the score that you really wanted. Looking for ways that you can improve your score. So does the volunteers know what they're going to be doing? They're going to come down here, and they're going to meet the instructor right here. And you're going to ask them that question: how you can improve. You're concerned about your score on the test and how you can improve. You comfortable with that? And so we'll have, so this table, do you have a volunteer? So we'll give you a minute to kind of pick your volunteer and then send them. Annie's already picked. So Annie is already picked. This is good.
There's like no words here. There's all staring.
Are you willing? Cool. And Annie, if you want, you can be the double group. So you and this student are both coming from your class. Cool. Annie's already on. All right, so we have Shay. Do we have a volunteer for this group? Rosie, would you be willing to volunteer to as a student?
Before you walk into the classroom.
All right, we have Shay, we have Annie. Do we have someone for this group?
Hey, what up?
Who wants to go first? Do you want to go first, Michelle?
You want on your.
Oh, yeah. Well, we haven't.
No.
Yes, and I'll go first. Annie, will you be the? Cool. All right, so we have Shane, we have Lucas, we have Mitchell, and Annie. All right. So here's our students. Students, you can be milling about here. Annie and Mitchell. Shay, would you be willing to be our first?
Sure.
All right, so, and I'm going to be the first instructor. So, as you're watching this, watch about active listening, watch about body language, watch how Shay communicates, watch how I communicate as an instructor. Okay. What's that? You be you. You be you. You be you. And you're, now, you just came from a class, you didn't do so well on your test. You want to find out ways you can improve good, focus, and action. Go ahead, Shay.
Alright. You read it? I'm confused. Like,
What?
like,
Oh, cool. Shay. Yeah, how's it going? Cool, yeah. Yeah, cool. Cool.
Alright, how you doing?
I'm great. Great. How are you?
I'm not about to tell you that. So,
Okay.
I'm not doing so hot on my test.
Shay, don't worry
And
about it. You're good. You're
no,
good. You're all
but
set.
I'm really, really picky about grades and all. My parents look at my grades and is there anything I can do for extra
Shay,
credit?
don't worry about it. You're fine.
What can I do?
You're great. No, you'll be just fine.
Why do you say that?
You keep coming to class, you'll be just fine. Don't worry. You're stressed. Don't just relax. You're good.
Is there any work I
You're
can do
good.
to get you better?
No, you'll be fine. You'll be fine. Come, I'll see you in class next time.
Can I talk to you sometime later
you'll
on
be
when
really
you're
great.
busy?
Cool. See you in class.
Alright.
Alright. So, what did we see?
I thought you had a Bluetooth.
I got 3 text messages that she was coming. So what did we say? What? So you and then you're uncomfortable.
It's like, no worries, like no cares in the world. I'm like, I don't like that.
Yeah.
You don't-
Tell me if I can't and I feel like move on and try harder. Or tell me there's a way I can get a better grade. Don't be like, no worries, friend, no worries. Don't do that.
Has anyone had an instructor like that where you ask them, they're like, you're gonna be fine, don't worry about it. Mitchell, you.
Yeah, back at I got all mad, and I was like, all right, next class came in. He was doing his stuff. As soon as class ended, I shut the door before he left. I was like, I got a few questions for you. I'm not gonna have you walk away from me this time.
You trapped him in there.
Yeah.
Are you asserted yourself? That's escalating assertion. So, any other thoughts about what else did you notice? So, Shay's saying, there was one moment where.
You were shuffling around, pacing back and forth with papers in your hand. You were not engaged at all. You were into your own thing, whatever you were reading or whatever.
Very passive.
Yeah.
Mhm. Any other observations from that kind of communication? These are true. Shay's wanting answers. Didn't get anything.
That's why I say, can I just make it a different time we can talk?
Right.
I'm not busy.
And what happened?
You were fine. But I'll come get you.
All right. But, so it didn't make you feel any better when they're like, you're fine. You're fine. That didn't work?
No.
All right. You needed something.
Yeah, a little more sturdy.
Okay.
Well, you didn't validate. You mean the person went there for a reason because they were feeling something. You didn't validate those feelings in any way.
No eye contact. No
security.
I would have left there more stress.
Yeah.
All right. Cool.
I mean, I wouldn't have left like that. I was like, excuse me, can you I need you to focus here with me. Like I would have said something. Because I'm not a little kid, you know what I'm saying? I'm not a little kid. So I understand what's going on with you. It's very important, you know, and I completely get that you as a teacher are very busy. However, I also have time, and my time is very important as well. And as a teacher, I feel like the same way that I respect your time, you should respect my time, because I want to do good in your class.
Whoa!
Carmen's
That's
fired up.
10 years, though. 10 years to be that.
And that's escalating assertiveness right there. That is right on.
Because we're all adults, and then we all have stuff going on, you know what I mean? So clear, just make sure you know what you have, you know what I mean? Make sure that you're clear and organized in your thoughts so that when that comes out to the person, they can really get your points, you know?
Yeah. All right, I want to be mindful of time. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
sorry.
Thank you. We have more instructors with us today. Thank you. Michelle Bardsley, Professor Bardsley. All right, who's our next person? Do we want to do the double? So Annie and Mitchell, all right, so you both did not do so well.
Awesome. There's a team effort?
Yeah. Tag team effort.
Yep.
I have a few questions on my test that seems I struggle on. We struggle on.
Regarding the most recent test that we had you take today?
Yeah.
Well, I feel like my presentation was clear and concise. I'm having a hard time believing that you didn't understand the directions.
You were going, well, in class today, when you were...
Well, no, it's not my fault that you can't keep up. Have you thought about going to the Learning Commons and learning some better study strategies?
I have. I went to the... What's the program?
Trio program?
Yeah, Trio. So we went
Let it happen.
I can't remember. It's a Friday morning.
I've got to...
So yes, I went to the Trio program and set up a few tutors to help me there.
Perfect. Then you should be all set for the next exam.
I do have a question though. Do you think you could go a little slower in class?
Well, my pace is my pace. My suggestion is you keep up. Whoa!
Well, is it okay if I can bring a tape recorder in to record the class? So when I go home, I can listen to it of what we have.
I have no problem with you using a device, as long as you're not on Facebook and your Twitter feeds and whatnot. It's important for you to pay attention to the lecture material. After all, I am the expert.
Wow.
Thank you for...
And I don't like it, and it's not very teacher-like.
Whoa! Say that to us! Woo! Awesome.
See, that's why I just sat there and shut my mouth, because I am very like, if I don't like something, I'm gonna tell you, and sometimes it's probably not gonna come out right. That's very awful.
But you know, too, she might not be aware how she's coming off.
Absolutely.
You know, I could be like, hey, teach.
But that took you a lot of like personality to make you that
I
rude.
say something
I know it took her a lot. She kept hiding her.
All right, well, let's read quickly, because we have one more instructor, Professor Wright. What a great name for a professor.
I just try to get
thank you. Let's thank Annie and Mitchell and Professor Bardsley. Good gosh. It's like,
I have to channel my inner.
like screech marks, really. Woo! So feedback quickly about Professor Bardsley in that conversation. Was there a whole lot of communicating?
There was very one-sidedness and very lot of stress and not all listening.
How many of you are going to want to go talk to Professor Bardsley?
No.
So, snaps.
I gotta say, Mitchell had me squirming.
He was being very assertive.
He was.
He wanted answers.
He was about to shut that door. All right, so I'd like to welcome Professor Wright.
You're saying always?
Preferring always, yeah. And I'm getting out of the way.
Man, I messed up on that last test.
Really?
Yeah, I got a real bad grade.
The one we
Is there
just
any way I
got
can make?
today?
Yeah. Is there any way I can make that up?
Well, let's talk a little bit about what went wrong on that test. Did you feel like you didn't understand the material that I went over in class, or?
Man, right before the class I studied, but I forgot everything. So
Okay.
soon afterwards.
So it sounds like you had some real anxiety sitting in the test, and just everything went right out the window.
I know. I almost had to go for a walk.
That's a good idea, huh?
Yeah.
Maybe we could set up a time for you to come in and meet with me, and we can go over the test, so I can kind of figure out where the problems were for you, and then maybe help you study better for the next one.
Yeah.
I can't let you retake the test because that wouldn't be fair to the rest of the class, but I will absolutely try to help you come up with ways to do better on the next test.
Alright.
And if I'm in class and I'm doing something that you don't understand, stop me right then and there. It's okay. You don't have to be embarrassed. Just tell me, hey, I didn't understand what you just said, because I want to know that. I want to be a better instructor. So don't be afraid to ask if you don't understand something. And about 5 minutes from now, I'm going to be down in my office. So why don't you come in and I'll pull up my schedule and we'll set up a time that you can meet with me.
Sure
Is that going to work for you?
Oh yeah, that'd be perfect.
Excellent. I'm so glad you stopped to talk to me.
Alright.
All right.
Thanks talking to you.
Woo! Wow! Well, yeah. Thank you, Professor Always Right. What did we notice? What was the thing? What did you see?
A lot more eye contact.
Yes.
She was very engaged. She tried to find a resolution for him. She set boundaries as well by telling him, you can't take the test, however, I'll help you such and such. That was
Other observations?
I think at KVCC that's what you're going to see, though. I mean, what we got to realize as students is the teacher wants you to succeed, and they're actually judged on how you succeed. So they have to have academic integrity, but with everything else besides that, they're going to do whatever they can to help you get the best grade possible, because it not only helps you, but it helps them.
It's funny because my A&P teacher, Judy Harris, the very first test that we took, when she handed them back, she actually said to the class, she said, I have some people in here that scored in the 60s. She didn't name names, but she actually said to them, you guys need to get in touch with me because I want to catch you now so we can work out a way to bring those grades up. And she actually even put it out there and let them know, I'm here for you. You just have to come to me, you know, because this isn't the end of the world. And I thought that was pretty nice.
She opened that door.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so she invited.
Yeah.
Yes. Wow, communication. Beautiful. How many of you are going to go see Landy, Professor Wright? If you're struggling in class. So by the way, she has Matt tutoring. Cool. And it was. I could feel it because you came in and your head was down, and then by the end of it, you were. I mean, it was like you were locked on, and you were like even your body. You know, your right ear wasn't there, but I mean, you were. It was really cool to watch. The body.
Ethan may have a career as an actor.
I think yeah. Cool. For the roles of student. Yeah, cool. So we're going to be putting on creating a movie, and we'll need all these. It's documenting the lives of 3 professors. No. Cool. Thank you for that. Thank you very much for your reporting out and for those.
And thank you, Tony, for mentioning that. I think there are a number of faculty that are going to approach it the Professor Wright way, not the Professor Bardsley.
Professor Wrong.
Yeah, right. Professor
Can you tell them about last time we did that?
Well, absolutely.
I just want to say really briefly, the last time we did this exercise, we had to Skype between 2 campuses because we had the class met at the same time on different campuses. It was actually Letitia, Shana's sister, who had Professor Bardsley.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
I thought it was.
No, I think it was Pauline.
Pauline,
well, anyway,
yes.
never mind.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
But oh my gosh, Michelle, like she was like leaning into it, so it was like imagine her whole face like on that. And she was like, you know, do you know how long I've been teaching this class?
Yeah.
Anyway,
You could feel it from over the interweb. Yes. Yeah, so just be careful with Michelle. But don't Skype with her, whatever. You know. Wonderful. So with our remaining time, we want to prep you for the assignment that you have coming at you for next week. We're going to, on the theme of communicating with an instructor, we have an assignment for you. And then what I'll do is let's move first, and then we'll divvy it up down there. So we're going to show you one of the available computer labs to you as a student on campus. So we're going to go. Yeah, we'll hand you out.
We can hand them out.
We'll
Actually,
hand them out
if you
when we
want to
get
be
there.
at the door, at the computer room door, just hand
Yeah.
everyone one as they walk in. It might be
So follow Michelle, and she will take you down, and then we'll continue our conversation.
Was she giving us? Okay.